Hello, everyone. I'm Roshan Mirajkar, one of your hosts for Reimagine 2020 V4. Where this is our fourth conference that we're throwing, and as you can see, we're all dressed up in our different costumes and outfits. I'm very excited to be joined here by Sachin, who is one of the founders of the Cryptocurrency Club at Georgetown University. So, Sachin, thank you so much for joining us here today. And how has the whole virtual world been for you the past couple of months? I know I've talked to you a couple of times.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. I've actually been doing quite well in the virtual world. When Georgetown, kicked everyone out and said everyone go home for COVID, um, I did some classes online, and then I started working for River Financial, which is a Bitcoin brokerage. And I've been working there ever since, and it's been a great time. I've been producing content and building their website for them, part of their website.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. You know, in the last couple of months, every time I've talked to you, you always talk about Bitcoin in particular. So I want to kind of get into some of those questions. I think a lot of what we speak about today will be solely focused on Bitcoin and kind of the macro trends happening with it. And I think that's fine because the space is wide open and there's a lot of updates happening in Bitcoin that I hope you go into today. So can you tell me, like, what are you most excited about Bitcoin right now? To start off, we can maybe kind of discuss the macroeconomics related to the price, like, not just the price going up, but how do you see it when you see large institutions buy like $400 or $500 of Bitcoin, and then following suit of that, we see the large upticks in price. I think we're at 13,000 at the point of this
Yeah,
interview right now.
yeah. I think monetary policy is the number one exciting thing for me right now about Bitcoin. I think it's been something always existed within Bitcoin. The monetary policy has been set from day one. It's never changing. And I think that is the biggest realization that's going to bring people to Bitcoin, is that they're going to realize the US dollar has no set monetary policy. It changes by the week. Even other cryptocurrencies have an unstable or changing monetary policy, but Bitcoin's is absolute and it's set in stone. And I think that's going to be the value of that is going to be seen over the next couple of years, especially with all the printing that's going on. Just not only is it set, but it's deflationary. So the monetary policy of Bitcoin means you can't just triple the supply of Bitcoins over any given period, which is what the US has been doing for the last 50 years. And that's really ramped up during COVID. So I think people are realizing, like, maybe macro investors, it starts with corporate executives, but then eventually the individual consumer is going to realize that if they hold their money in US dollars or Ripple, they're not saving their money. It's slowly melting like an ice cube, to use Michael Saylor's term.
Yeah, and we're actually also talking to Michael Saylor, so that's pretty exciting for us. But why do you think that, let's say, because we're talking about Michael Saylor, why do you think institutions are mainly only buying Bitcoin? I've seen this discussion of them not wanting to gain any exposure to altcoins or even things like Ethereum. Do you think it ties back to specifically what you think about, Bitcoin's value and being set in stone? There's not a limited amount of ETH, and even other coins, they could potentially, they don't have that hard limit, or at least people don't believe so. So do you think
Yeah,
that,
it's
yeah, what do you think about that?
it's partially that Bitcoin had a sort of immaculate conception. Another term I didn't invent, but someone anonymous invented it, and then he nurtured it and then disappeared. And now no one knows who he is, and no one can claim leadership of Bitcoin. And that's not really true of any other project. I mean, Ripple has a corporation behind it. Ethereum is sort of decentralized, but we all know who's in charge. You can name a couple names. Those people can alter the whole entire consensus mechanism at will. But Bitcoin, there is no one like that. And so it's a whole bunch of decentralized people who contribute code, discuss code, and then implement it on their own node. So at home, I run my own node, and that enforces the rules of Bitcoin, and that's exactly how Bitcoin works. And I think that's a lot more reliable for a company. I mean, Michael Saylor talked about this. He looked at SegWit, the SegWit wars, and he's decided Bitcoin is the only one that's worth sticking with because the community and the decentralization of Bitcoin was proven beyond doubt. And with that comes immutability. Like, certain things about Bitcoin are never going to change, the monetary policy being the most important, but other things like, block size or other things are not going to be arbitrarily changed for the benefit of a few people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think because the network is so large and it's continuously improving, you see a lot of people kind of believe in it. The first thing they believe in, which I think is fine. I think, even a lot of the other speakers at this conference, they kind of touch on a lot of different things. But I think talking to you, one interesting thing is, you spend a lot of time not just analyzing the macro trends of Bitcoin, but you actually keep up to date with a lot of the updates out there. So, one of my questions to you is, a lot of people criticize Bitcoin for not being as private as other things. So, what is kind of your response to that? And maybe get into a little bit of some of the updates, but I know you're going to be doing a presentation on this, so you don't have to get too detailed, but why do you believe that these privacy issues will be fixed?
Not to sound like a broken record, but I think it all comes back to money. And you need to build a private system on top of a sound money. And you can build a perfectly private system, but if you don't build it on top of a sound money and like a good foundation, then it's not really worth having. I mean, cash right now, physical cash, physical US dollars, is probably more private than Bitcoin in certain instances. But for other reasons, Bitcoin is the superior money because it's like it has a sound foundation, and therefore we can build privacy on top of that. But you can never get better monetary policy with a very private asset like physical US dollars. So you can improve privacy, but you can't improve monetary policy over time. And so that's why I think I'm okay with Bitcoin being not perfectly private right now, but we have the money issue solved, and now it's time to build out the privacy. So we see things like CoinJoin, CoinSwap, PayJoin, Taproot, all these different upgrades that are coming to Bitcoin, some through the source code and some through external projects, but they're all giving Bitcoin more and more privacy. So.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how different, not only companies but different countries use Bitcoin. Like, what do you think about those stories that people always talk about, where you have people in different parts of the world that are actually using Bitcoin, not even the currency, but even the network, to try to fight some of this censorship resistance?
Yeah.
I want to kind of compare and contrast that and talk about stable coins for a second, because I think it's interesting that the countries in which are launching stable coins are literally the companies that have the most censorship out there. So, I want to get kind of your thoughts on, because you like Bitcoin so much and you spend so much time on it. What do you think about some of the other evolutions that are happening, like central bank digital currencies? What do you think they're doing it for? And where does Bitcoin kind of fit into that as it continually, upgrades with its software?
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of like attractive trends in the cryptocurrency space. It used to be ICOs, then it used to be like privacy coins, now central bank digital currencies and stable coins. I think these all are technologies that solve a different problem than Bitcoin. Bitcoin solves a problem of money, and central bank digital currencies solve the problem of or rather they create more problems than they solve. But the problem they're trying to solve is payment methods. So how do you quickly transact with someone else? They don't care about freedom. They don't care about deflation or inflation, any of that. They're only trying to make sure that their citizens keep using a government currency. And so they're looking at competition like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and they're saying we need to have something that looks like this. But a central bank digital currency really solves completely different problems. It's trying to be like Venmo, and we already have Venmo. And obviously not everyone has Venmo. It's only a US company, but like my point is that Venmo doesn't solve the problem of money. It solves the problem of, tipping, sending 5 cents at a time, speed, that kind of stuff. So those are less interesting problems to me because I think it's very easy to do that. Like you can do it through Venmo, you can do it through Ripple, you could do it with an Excel spreadsheet. Those are kind of simpler problems that don't really need to be solved just yet, in my opinion. I think the biggest problem is, does your money hold its value, and can your money be stolen from you through censorship or just confiscation?
So you're not really a fan of these latest developments with PayPal and how they're integrating it into their wallet, but you can't withdraw.
Yeah, so to me, that's not Bitcoin. I mean, I'm a purist in that sense, but I don't consider an IOU to be Bitcoin. I think if you hold your own keys and if you're able to withdraw and use it on the blockchain, then that's Bitcoin. But anyone who owns Bitcoin on PayPal, or Robinhood is a better example because they're already in existence. If you own Bitcoin on Robinhood, it's never touching the blockchain. And so you'll never know if you really have it, or they're just telling you, yeah, we have 10,000 Bitcoin for you. I mean,
yeah, like not to sound like a broken record, but like a promise of a promise is just like another delayed promise. And I think there definitely is differences. One thing I was talking with about other speakers that I think I want to bring up here is going back to like kind of the institutional interest. We've seen a lot of institutions buy up a lot of Bitcoin, but then many of them, like Square, are actually I would say doing positive things by funding the open source development. So what do you think that will eventually lead to? And do you think that kind of signals a larger shift in these companies where they're not just buying the asset and doing nothing else? They're actually going further. And I would say maybe they're kind of being selfish. They're trying to support the network in the way they can. But in the end, no one really owns it because we don't really have anything like this in, I would say, the traditional world. I mean, we have some open source companies, different things like that, but the mergers and acquisition type of deals always ends up benefiting, let's say, two parties. And in this case, it's like MicroStrategy could come in and like Square, help the Bitcoin network out in whatever way, infrastructure or development, right?
yeah.
And that just benefits everyone. So I want your thoughts on, do you find this like weird, or do you think it's just like a shift? Like these guys have given up on cash and other stable coins. They don't want to hold either one, literally.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's incentive system is beautiful. It's incredible, and it's something that hasn't been replicated so far by any other cryptocurrencies. The incentive system for Bitcoin is if you hold it, it will go up. And if you start holding it, you realize you want it to go up faster. So you start helping the system, and you realize like this is such an incredible thing that has been built, and it was built with zero, like there was no seed round, there was no Series A, there was no corporate buyout. It was all built by open source development. And so you have companies like Square who invest in it and also want to improve their own investment. You have companies like Blockstream, BitMEX, Coinbase, who all contribute to development, and that kind of has a feedback loop of improving their own investment. So if you integrate Taproot and you hold Bitcoin, Bitcoin is now more useful. And so more people can use Bitcoin, making your own investment more valuable. So I think that's a great incentive system. and it's really unique. So I think it comes down to like Bitcoin has a culture of everyone should contribute, and if you want something, you go out and build it. So I think that's great, and that's
Yeah,
like a
and
non-economic incentive, but it still exists and it still has an effect, obviously.
yeah, before we get into your presentation, you might cover this, but for people listening out there, I want you to kind of explain Taproot in one or two sentences, and then I also want your thoughts on, there's so many new exciting things happening in the crypto world, like NFTs and DeFi. So I feel like a lot of people don't realize maybe how often Bitcoin gets upgraded or how many people are working on it. Can you kind of speak about
Yeah.
what you've learned, like your experience there, and maybe even ways like people can like get involved that they might not know about? They think you can just buy it and it sits there, right?
Yeah. I think there is a misperception that Bitcoin is very slow and doesn't really upgrade, and all these other projects are moving at the speed of light. Um, Bitcoiners have a phrase, move fast and break things. And Bitcoiners prefer to, develop conservatively, make sure everything works and that no one's going to lose money, and then implement it. And that's why haven't really had we haven't been forced to use hard forks in a while, which is a big security benefit because all of Bitcoin's changes have been soft forks for a very long time. Whereas other projects, you have projects where they'll implement this new awesome feature, but then 2 weeks later it breaks and they have to, reset the whole thing, or it just goes to zero. So I think Bitcoin's like conservative nature is pretty big value proposition. It's not something to be looked at as a weakness. I also think it might sound contradictory, but it is easy to like get involved and start looking at code. Maybe not the Bitcoin source code, but there's lots of projects out there like wallets and other projects that might just be easier to get into as a beginning developer. So this summer I built a wallet. It's very simple. I wouldn't suggest you use it to, transact or store your Bitcoin, but it was a really cool project and it's been fun, learning how all these things work. And it's
Yeah.
really easy to just read Bitcoin's documentation, the BIPs, and see how each of these features like SegWit or PSBTs or hardware wallet, like hierarchical deterministic wallets work, and then try to implement them in code. So
Yeah, we'll say the wallet that you built is in beta right now, but
yes, yeah.
no, but I think I think that's definitely true. There's different layers and steps to kind of getting involved in the space. Buying it is just one step you can do, but if you want to get your hands dirty, you can definitely mess with a lot of the stuff. And it's cool. A lot of it is open source, and they really should teach it more at universities. Talking to you, we both founded student blockchain clubs, so we kind of have gone down that path and seen the interest there. But kind of going back to the macro perspective of where we are in the world and like Bitcoin's place, in your time in the space, like what are some of the spookiest or scariest encounters or stories you have for us?
Well, to admit something, last summer or the previous summer, I tried to rent an apartment in DC to do an internship. And the landlord, he said, I'll give you 10% discount if you use Bitcoin. And like an idiot, I sent him Bitcoin. And then he disappeared because he didn't actually own that apartment. Complete scam. I shouldn't have trusted, don't trust verified. And I never saw that Bitcoin again. I watched it on the blockchain, tracked it. He used CoinJoin, kind of made it hard to track. So he definitely, knew what he was doing, and he took a good chunk of Bitcoin away from me. So that was That was not a happy day. Um,
Okay, I mean that's a unique story. I've actually never heard of anyone accepting Bitcoin for like mortgages or even apartments and rent and stuff like that. But yeah, it just goes to show that you can trust the transactions, but maybe not people. I think that's pretty consistent. Um, I kind of want to get into your presentation now, and just to give you some time and preface this. What Sachin is going to be presenting about is he's going to be kind of be talking about some upgrades that Bitcoin is going through right now, and kind of contrasting that with all the other weird, funky things that are going on in the space. Like there's a lot of talk about the need for privacy, especially now. Everyone's talking about how our money is being reinvented. It's like not even random. You go to the store right now, they don't even accept cash or coins in some places. So, hey, welcome to the new world. So Sachin, I'm really excited to see your short presentation and kind of give people a deeper look at what's happening with Bitcoin related to privacy. And I think this is uh, right on track with our spooky theme, talking about VPNs, the Tor network, privacy, like why it's all so important, right? Like why privacy is literally a right. So Sachin, I'll let you take it away, and hope everyone enjoys this presentation.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'll be talking about Bitcoin privacy and how Taproot changes that. So Bitcoin privacy, it's obviously a very like nuanced, complex topic. So I'm not going to give like straight up answers on how private Bitcoin is. So here, first we'll discuss Bitcoin privacy, and we'll get into Taproot. So Bitcoin's based on a blockchain. The blockchain keeps all official transactions, and each transaction has an amount that's being sent, and it has inputs. So the payer spends their own coins, and to do so, they need to add a signature. So inputs reveal signatures, and then outputs reveal addresses or public keys. So an address is somewhere you send Bitcoin to. So if I send Bitcoin to someone, I send it to their address. And so that's a form of a pseudonymous identification for how the Bitcoin is sent. And this is visible to all. So the blockchain is public, it's distributed. Everyone who wants to can keep a copy and examine that copy. If you go to blockstream.info, you can check out the entire blockchain. You can look at every block, every transaction, and every address. So that's a really cool tool to just help you visualize what the blockchain is. But basically, it's public. So Bitcoin uses pseudonymous addresses and signatures, so it never reveals your full name or your address or your phone number, like a bank does. When you sign up for a bank account, you reveal your phone number, address, social security, etc. to them. With Bitcoin, all you need is to give an address or a public key, and you can start receiving Bitcoin. So a UTXO, or a coin, a single piece of Bitcoin, can be traced from point A to B to C and so on by looking at which addresses owned it. So if I have address A and I send it to address B, and then B sends it to C, the coin itself can be traced across the blockchain. So that's kind of bad for privacy, we'd say. But ownership can't be proven. You can't tie this blockchain data to the real world data of who this person is, what their name, date of birth, address is, all that stuff. So there's no connection there. So we have real world identity, name, location, IP address, your other financial situation, and we have pseudonymous blockchain data. So who you're sending to, who you're receiving from, who owns it before and after you, all that stuff is on the blockchain, and your real world identity is separate, and those are, contain different data points. Now, this is combined using, KYC process that exchanges undergo. So mostly exchanges, brokerages, other financial institutions do KYC, which is know your customer. And they combine this data to yield a unified identity. So if you use an exchange, if you buy from River or Coinbase, they will know both your blockchain data and your real world information. And they can combine that to form like an identity and know which Bitcoins you own. So that's part of breaking privacy. So this is the general flow of how privacy is broken for Bitcoin transactions. So you start off as public and pseudonymous. It's the blockchain. You only use addresses and public keys. Great. Then you have know your customer laws. So those are, laws implemented by governments and then enforced by exchanges and financial institutions. And these exchanges and financial institutions use chain analysis. So they analyze the blockchain to track the Bitcoin from address A to B to C, etc. So chain analysis uses heuristics, which are like loose rules to determine who owns what Bitcoin. And that way they get to a known identity. So if you withdraw your Bitcoin to your wallet, and then you send it from your wallet to, say, a gambling site, and you send all of that Bitcoin to a gambling site, chain analysis can generally assume that you still own that and that you sent it to some other wallet that you control. In this case, it's a gambling site wallet, but it's your money. So that's how they break your privacy and determine what Bitcoin you own and where you're sending it. So how do you restore privacy? Actually, you use the same exact heuristics that the chain analysis companies use, and you try to break those heuristics. So you look at the rules they're using, and you try to break those rules. Or you break the chain. So the blockchain is the series of blocks that contain all the transactions. And if you can somehow switch ownership out of view of the blockchain, then you'll reestablish your privacy. So if you break the heuristics or break the chain, then you can achieve uncertainty in the eyes of chain analysis, and you can establish an anonymity set. And we'll talk about what an anonymity set is later. And that way you can restore pseudonymous and public nature of blockchain. So how do you break the chain? And this is not advice on what you should do or what's legal to do. It's just how is it possible to break the chain? There are many ways. So there are many ways to break the chain. At present, you can use Lightning Network, sidechains, physical transactions, and other coins, so altcoins. So you can also break chain analysis heuristics using things like CoinJoin, Whirlpool, CoinSwap, PayJoin, etc. And there are a lot more of those kind of technologies coming out soon. And then we'll discuss how you can break these things in the future. So future ways to reestablish privacy. And that includes Taproot, which includes Schnorr and Mast, most importantly. So the Lightning Network, you may be familiar with it. It's a way of transacting offline Bitcoin, or Bitcoin off the blockchain. So you can have a transaction with someone else, and only you and that other person know about that Bitcoin. And it's not recorded on the blockchain. So that transaction is very private, as in only the payee and the payer know that it occurred, and no one else can really track it. So big privacy gain. And then the history of Lightning transactions aren't stored publicly anywhere. So as soon as you stop using Lightning, all those transactions are just kind of lost to the history. So really high privacy. Other benefits of the Lightning Network include really cheap fees, really fast transactions. So it's a pretty great innovation. It's not quite ready. It's still being developed, but already it provides some great privacy benefits. The second best way to preserve your privacy is by using CoinJoin or Whirlpool. So this is a picture of a CoinJoin transaction. On the left, you see the green inputs, so in 0 and 1 and 2, and on the right, you see outputs. So Bitcoin is put in various amounts, and then it's all mixed up and reassembled in various amounts on the output. And if you look at the outputs, you'll see that they're all in equal amounts. So it's almost impossible to tell which input leads to which output. Very difficult to get any information out of this graph. You can't see who sent what to who. And this way, all 5 of these outputs look identical, even though the inputs belong to 5 different people. So great for privacy. And what CoinJoin does is it establishes an anonymity set. So after this, imagine you had 1 Bitcoin and you put it in as 1 input, and then you got 1 Bitcoin out. If in this case, there would be 5 outputs of 1 Bitcoin, and you would be one of them. So someone trying to track you would have to guess which one of those you are. And you'd have an anonymity set of 1 in 5. So that's what an anonymity set it's. Sorry. So you'd have an anonymity set of 1 in 5. So you could be any one of 5 people. And you can imagine that if you did a CoinJoin multiple times, you could get a bigger anonymity set, which is great. So that is essentially how you reestablish privacy using CoinJoin. It's not through any kind of hiding mechanism, but more hiding in a crowd. So, yeah. Okay, so that leads to the complete privacy cycle of chain analysis using heuristics to track usage, and then privacy advocates developing ways of breaking those heuristics or breaking the chain and reestablishing privacy. And this is a continuous cycle. Chain analysis and privacy advocates are constantly developing new ways of making and breaking heuristics. It's like anything in law enforcement. As soon as the police catch on, the non-compliant people find some other way of getting around it. That's not to say that any of this is legal or wrong. It's just an arms race. So how does the Taproot upgrade change Bitcoin privacy? So the Taproot upgrade upgrades Bitcoin in a couple ways. First, it changes the cryptography behind Bitcoin. So this is called Schnorr. Schnorr is an alternative form of cryptography to ECDSA, which is what Bitcoin uses today. Both are still elliptic curve cryptography, but Schnorr has a few advantages. So first, you can aggregate signatures. You can aggregate public keys, and you can achieve much faster verification and batch verification. So if a node accepts a block with, say, 1,000 transactions, it can actually verify 1,000 signatures all at once. So great efficiency gain there. So it's easier to run a node. It's faster to verify blocks, all of that. Taproot also enables a MAST-like protocols, and we'll talk about what MAST is a bit later. But most importantly, we have signature and public key aggregation. So here's what that looks like in practice. Say Alice and Bob want to set up a multi-signature wallet, or address. So they both want to contribute funds to a public key such that the funds, in order to be spent, need signatures from both parties. So this is a 2 of 2 multi-sig. What they can do with Schnorr is they can use their public keys and combine them to form a joint public key. So if you see at the center, we have public key AB, which is a public key that represents both Alice and Bob. And that public key needs a signature that is created by both Alice and Bob. And the cool thing is Alice and Bob can both use their private keys to create separate signatures and combine those signatures into one signature to sign for one public key. So we'll look at how that helps privacy. So a legacy 2 of 2 multisig, which is the old version of doing things, would have 2 addresses, one for Alice and one for Bob, and 2 signatures, one for Alice, one for Bob. So total of 4 like data points, and everyone fully reveals their information. So they reveal who created the setup and who signed the setup. With Taproot, you can do the same thing, but you only reveal one public key and one signature. So just based on data, you've already saved space, which is how you save on fees. So there's a fee savings. There's also a privacy savings in terms of no one knows if this was a multi-signature transaction. There's no way of telling how many people created the multi-sig. Is it a 2 of 2? Is it a 5 of 5? Is it a 3 of 5? That kind of stuff is all hidden. And if it is a 3 of 5, you don't know which 3 people signed it. So that's something that is hidden. So big space saving, big privacy gain. So these kind of multi-sigs are actually cheaper to use than legacy multi-sigs, which is great because multi-signature has a lot of security and privacy benefits that are currently more expensive, but would get cheaper with the Taproot upgrade. So just to simplify what we just went over, presently you have P2PKH, which is the most used transaction type where you just send Bitcoin to an address, and then to spend that Bitcoin, the spender needs to reveal the signature and the public key. So they reveal a lot about themselves when they spend that. Pay to script hash, P to SH, is another type of script where you send Bitcoin to a script and the spender reveals that script with any necessary signatures and public keys. So that's how legacy Taproot or legacy multisig works, is through P2SH. And again, that reveals a lot. It reveals who signed, what the setup was it 2 of 2, was it 3 of 3, and which people signed. With Taproot, however, single sig and multi-sig transactions look exactly the same. In both cases, you reveal one public key and then one signature when you spend. And in that way, all single sigs look like multi-sigs, all multi-sigs look like single sigs. And for people like chain analysis companies or the governments to try to track this, it's very hard to tell what is going on in a given transaction. So that's the main privacy benefit of Schnorr, which is just one part of Taproot. So in conclusion, Taproot offers greatly improved privacy for multi-sig transactions and secondarily for single sig transactions because they look like multi-sig transactions. So it's privacy through obscurity in terms of it's really hard to determine what kind of transaction a given transaction is. So you hide all of the stuff about the multi-sig. So who started it, who set it up, and then who signed. Yeah. So these are the chain analysis heuristics that are broken. So chain analysis usually assumes that in a given transaction, all the inputs are owned by the same person. But this isn't true for a Taproot multisig. It's not true for any multisig, but since you can't tell what's a multisig and what's a single sig, it's now not true for any transactions. So that's a big benefit. Script type, so you can't tell what script type is used as easily under Taproot. And that is a heuristic that chain analysis uses to determine which outputs have been sent where. So if I send 5 Bitcoin to someone and I return 2 Bitcoin to myself as change, and the 5 Bitcoin is sent to a P2SH script, there's a very low likelihood that that's a change output versus if my 2 Bitcoin output, the change output, is a P2PKH, which is a very common form of change output. script, then chain analysis can tell I have kept the 2 Bitcoin and sent the 5 Bitcoin elsewhere. So it's a bit of an explanation of what a script type heuristic is. And then lastly, MAST enables users to lock Bitcoin such that many different scripts can unlock it. So instead of sending Bitcoin to one address, you still send it to one address, but this address represents several possible scripts. So there are many ways, or possibly many different people who could spend the same Bitcoin. And this is done without, compromising privacy or paying lots of fees because you're paying for lots of scripts. So MAST is another advantage. Won't go into it here, but it's another privacy advantage that Taproot offers. So in conclusion, Bitcoin can be very private. It still has a lot of work to be done. And Taproot is one of those things that needs to be done to enhance Bitcoin privacy. But no matter what you do, you're still going to get chain analysis companies who will de-anonymize Bitcoin, with the help of exchanges and banks. So no matter how private the Bitcoin blockchain is, if you buy your Bitcoin on an exchange, they'll have your Bitcoin and they'll have your personal identification. So there's more than just blockchain upgrades. There's more than just Bitcoin upgrades that are needed in order to establish Bitcoin privacy. There are lots of Bitcoin privacy tools that give you the ability to establish privacy for yourself. So Taproot is something that helps everyone's privacy. Everyone who transacts on Bitcoin gains privacy, even if you don't really use Taproot, just because it kills so many of the heuristics that chain analysis has been using. But there are other tools that you can use to establish your own individual privacy. CoinJoin, PayJoin, other kinds of tools. You can buy on a decentralized exchange. You can use something like Join Market, etc. So those kind of privacy tools are also available, so that individuals will be able to establish privacy for themselves. But chain analysis will still be there to de-anonymize the rest of you. So if you want your privacy, you can have it. You have to work for it, and you have to kind of be vigilant, because if we establish one level of privacy, chain analysis will do everything they can to break that privacy, and then you have to go another step, and then they'll go another step, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's everything I have. There's a lot more, obviously, to be discovered about Bitcoin privacy, but just this one upgrade is going to be a big boost to Bitcoin privacy in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. Actually, even myself, I really enjoyed it. I think it's great for anyone watching. You can watch this presentation over multiple times, because I think you did an awesome job explaining what the hell is actually going on when you're using all this technology and the difference between the exchanges and so on. And I love how you kind of broke it down into here's what's going on. And then you also showed us here's what we can do to protect ourselves. And I loved your quote at the end about, if you really want that privacy, you got to go a step further. Sachin, thank you so much for joining us here today at Reimagine 2020 V4. And everyone, I'm your host, Roshan again, and I'll let you all tune back in. Thank you, Sachin, being
Thank you.
Today.
It's great to be here. Thanks.